Points News.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
really
you.
honored to have you with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
The mission behind our project is simple. We promote peace. We stand firmly against war and any violent conflict.
Okay.
Today, we're excited to talk with you about business, personal growth, values, and yes, just a bit of global politics.
Okay.
You began your journey in South Africa. What inspired you to get into business?
Well, it's a natural sort of inclination that I had to, work, and do work for myself. I've never really worked for anybody. I worked from almost the day one for myself, So I never really looked for work from someone else. I just worked for myself, you know. And generally, in those days, much like my children, I found that working with other people was very slow, and working for other people was very bad, no good at all. So I rather worked for myself. So when I left university, I really was had nothing at all, nothing. But within about 2 to 3 years, I was already a city councillor, the capital city, and I was also able to buy my first aeroplane and and so forth. So I bought my first new Mercedes Benz when I was 24. So um, I was working for myself, same as my sons. So they did the same thing, and both my sons were dollar multimillionaires by the time they were 27. So they also worked for themselves. They never worked for anybody.
That's really interesting. I mean, is it all about ambitious?
Well, yes, it's about whether you find the people that you with slow, or something, and you can see that you can do whatever they are doing better. And if you don't have them as a burden, you rather do it yourself, And I did that, and oddly enough, although I didn't expect it, both my sons did the same thing. And my older daughter, Tosca, she worked for Universal Studios for a long time after finishing film school. But she very soon started her own film business. And today she runs and owns Passionflix, which she's the sole owner of Passionflix. And they make full-length movies. They make a full-length movie every 6 weeks to 3 months. She's made hundreds of movies. And they're like Netflix. You can subscribe to Passionflix. They're romance movies. So that's the way we are. We sort of do our own thing, And I have an older daughter who's a middle daughter. She's 32. She also has worked for a company, but she now has her own company. So we tend to do our own things because the people we work with are too slow, Yeah. Yeah.
Too slow. Yeah, but what do you think motivates people to start their own business companies?
Well, I would say if you look at yourself, you're doing this the same thing. You appear to be doing the same thing. You're doing your own thing. You're not going to work for a TV studio or a TV station. You're trying to do your own thing with the means that are available now to you. And so in some ways you're the same, So yeah, you're the same. It sounds like to me you're the same, And the important thing is in business or in life rather, is to get in contact with the people who are making things different, like you, to a certain extent, are coming to me. So you look for those people that are changing things or appear to see things differently, and then you find out from them what's going on. And one of the things that people don't realize is young people don't realize is that youth is the future. So I found as a young man that I could meet older men, let's say, who were in business, who were really made a success of their lives, and they were looking for, or they needed young blood. And so when I came along and said, I can work with you, I can help you, they jumped at it because I was youthful and full of energy and I never said no, So if they said, we've got a, whatever, I'm an engineer by profession. I became a consulting engineer. So we're consulting engineers where people come to you and ask you if you can help them with their problem in engineering or manufacture. And so I would tell people I can solve their problems. And then they would come to me and then it didn't matter what time of night or where I had to go or how far I had to go, I would still go and do it. And once you've done that a few times, then everybody hears about you and then they contact you, and before you know where you are, you've got people coming all the time with things, And so I remember as a young engineer, about 25, people came to me and said one day, do you realize that you're involved in 40 building projects in the city? I said, well, I haven't really counted them, but because all the building projects, huge buildings and sometimes huge shopping centers, they have a big sign outside saying, big notice board saying who is doing this project. And then one person came and said, you're on 40 projects in a city. And I said, well, I didn't count them, but I guess I must be. And so that's what happens, And the same thing happens the same with Elon and Kimball. People just come to them and, well, Tosca's in a specific line, but people come all the time asking you for to help them, And so in my case, by the time I was about 35 years old, I didn't have to go to work anymore because I was a shareholder of many buildings, and I could do my own thing, So I raised horses and I went into other lines, buying and selling aircraft and, things that I found interesting, rather than just the daily grind, Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
But it's in the family. It's in the family here, to do that kind of thing.
In your
Yeah.
view, what qualities make a strong leader, whether in business, innovation, or science? Have those
What?
qualities changed over the, I don't know, last 30 years?
Well, nothing changes. I mean, people have still got difficulties. I think one of the biggest problems I've seen over the last 30 years is the extent to which the governments and socialism have tried to stop people like me and try to slow everything down and turn everything around. I'd say that's probably one of the things I've seen developing over many years, the last 30 years especially, where corruption, theft, graft, favors for friends have taken over from people doing good work. I've seen that a lot, and that's a killer. That's a real killer. People wanting to get rich, not by adding value, but by taking money from other people without doing anything for it. And so that's a big problem today. It's a very big problem. And the amount it used to be about the people that were in the society when I was younger that were like that were about 25% of the population. But now it's more than half the population are trying to live without adding any value to the work they do, just trying to scam or get their way, get money any way they can. And that's not the way to do things, And it's usually started by a socialistic government, Yes.
Could you name, I don't know, several qualities that are important to be a strong leader?
Yes, to be a strong leader, well, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to realize that you have to, when people often ask you to do something, you have to realize that you have to do it as well, you have to do it better than they expect. So if they expect you to do this much, then you do that much. And that's a strong leader, and you even, in cases like that, advise the person you're helping that you see newer ways or better ways to do what that person or those people are trying to do. And then you show them better ways, and that's a strong leader, If you see them going wrong, you say, hey, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that, you should do it like this. I think it's obvious, you only have to look at, especially Elon, at his life, how much influence he has had simply by telling people to their face, what you're doing is wrong. And the result is what happens with Elon, what happened with Elon. So, for example, Elon has never been out there to try and make money, but by doing the way he works and the way he does things, same as me and Kimball, I suppose, and Tosca and my younger children. But anyway, then you become, you do very well, and you get a lot of income because you don't look for the income follows you, and that kind of thing. I mean, Elon bought Twitter, and they paid 44 billion with it. The last valuation of Twitter combined with AI Grok is over 120 billion, and everybody was laughing at Elon a while back for paying so much for X or Twitter, but now it's worth 3 times more than he paid for it. So I mean, but he didn't go that way. He went trying to make a free speech platform, and added to that a search engine. And now he wants people to be able to use X to pay their accounts, pay their municipal bills, and pay their car payments and so on as well. So he's forever looking for new ways to make things cheaper and easier for people. And then if you do that, then the sort of income comes with it, all the money follows you. And, that's what happens. I mean, he started a company because he wanted to build, in Elon's case, tunnels for cars, Now they have so many projects, and the company is valued at billions of dollars, So it's really quite weird. You just have to do it, do what you think, you plan to do. I mean, or you think is right, and then everything follows, I mean, they're building robots now that Elon says everyone will have a robot in their house, Optimus robot in their house, doing their daily chores for them in about 15 years from now. So, everybody will have one, which is quite weird. But my personal interest is in studying gravity and space-time travel, because we must find a way to use gravity for our purposes. We are stuck on Earth at the moment, glued to Earth, you might say. We can only move backwards and forwards. The airplanes can go up because they move very fast and they turn the air into a sort of liquid. So they sort of swim through the air. But we need to control gravity in such a way that we can simply go up into the air without moving forward. And we have to do that. If you go to the films and movies and cinema and TV and so on, they show you things like that. They show you vehicles moving up in the air and moving around and all that sort of stuff. And that's just in the movies. The movies are ahead of us. They presume that we will be doing that. But at the moment, nobody's making any effort to get there. So I want to start an institute of study where we hire all the geeks and nerds around the world that we can find, like the people we used to have, like I'm thinking of Einstein and Tesla and people like that, Edison, and imagine many people in Russia especially. I know that in Russia, talking about Russia, they've made so many inventions in Russia that you can't even count them on one hand. on all your hands and fingers and toes and everything. There's just so many. I mean, even the telephone was invented in Russia at the same time that it was invented in America. So these are the type of people that we're looking for. We use a telephone like we're doing now. Bell and in Russia at the same time, there was another man who was about a day behind Bell, filing a patent, because he wanted to help his deaf wife be able to hear better. And so he was playing around with ways to do that with electricity and microphones and so on. And that led to the telephone. And, the telephone led to the cell phone, and the cell phone led to the video phone, and so forth, So, yeah, it's about, and the world is full of people like that. It's full of people like that. The problem is that you get governments that introduce socialistic methods where they tell you you don't have to work, we will just give you money anyway. And they give you a little bit of money, guarantee that you'll always be poor, but just enough to eat. And then nobody wants to do any work. England is a classic example of that. England, or the UK, is a classic example of socialism that has put an end to what was once a great country,
Yes, many people, from ordinary citizens to futurists, believe that our future lies in space.
Yes. It can't lie in space until going up in space in rockets is not good. It's not the right way. We need to find a solution to gravity so that we can move upwards without. We need to be able to move in, I suppose you might call it the fourth dimension. Like up to about 100 years ago, many of the great mathematicians, following on the discovery of special relativity and E equals mc squared and so on, many of those mathematicians like Minkowski and Hardy and so on, they were all looking at ways of achieving space-time travel and overcoming gravity. But somehow, after about 1925, people stopped doing it for some reason. But many papers were written around that time on the issue, and for some reason it just stopped. It's important to realize that before 1905, which is 120 years ago, which is in the time maybe of your grandparents or great-grandparents, and not long ago, people were told at school and at university that the sun is a lump of coal. The sun in the sky is a piece of coal, and it's burning there, and that's what the sun is burning, because it's made of coal. And of course that's rubbish. And then in 1905 or so, a young man who was 25 years old at the time, he got a second-class pass at university in science, and he couldn't get a job as a lecturer because he didn't have a first-class pass. But he managed to get a job as a patent clerk, and he had a lot of time on his hands. So he was a technical assistant in a patent office, and he wrote his thoughts down on paper and then sent them to the University of Heidelberg. He didn't even have the money for postage. He sent them with a friend, and his paper outlined special relativity. And the mathematicians there, including Minkowski, were able to take his calculations and his thoughts and come to the famous equation: energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And then all of a sudden, everybody realized in 1905 that the sun is not made of coal, that it's actually a mass being turned into energy. And so at that time, nobody had discovered the element helium. They were under the impression that the sun was, from the spectrograph, hydrogen, and another element that they didn't understand. But now they soon discovered it. They soon learned that the sun is hydrogen atoms being converted to helium atoms, and that there's a little bit of mass loss each time. And that little bit of mass is turned into energy, and that's the energy we receive from the sun. And so just because some young man in a patent office, in his office job, worked this out, that's why we understand things. We need people like that to help us solve gravity. And, it was from 1905, 40 years, before they built the atomic bomb, from the very teachings or things that Einstein discovered. So you realize we need to do some study. We need to have people who are looking at these things, and we can't look at conventional scientists. We have to look at people who think a little bit differently, you know, who are able to think differently, you know. Remember, when you were at school or university before 1905, if they asked you in an exam, what is the sun? You wrote down it's a piece of coal. And then you got a mark, you got a tick, that's right. You get 1 point. But that's ridiculous. You know? Okay, next question.
Yeah, but so you think space exploration could become could space exploration become a force that unites humanity instead of dividing us?
Yes, of course. You know, humanity is not that divided. I've traveled around the world in the last 2 weeks. I've been to 6 or 7 countries in the last 2 weeks. The people are nice everywhere. You know, people are not. We live in a relatively good time. People are you know, not so. They're very nice. People everywhere you go are very nice. They don't have crazy governments and crazy kings and crazy leaders anymore that are trying to cause trouble everywhere. So we generally live in quite a good time. And so humanity is not that split up, actually. It's people are much the same everywhere, you know. Yeah. But obviously, if you take the International Space Station, that was a joint effort, and it got nobody had a problem with that. So yeah, I can't see. I mean, obviously, if we all suddenly found ourselves being told that there's an asteroid heading for Earth and it's going to hit Earth, we'd all be joined up together very quickly to find out what we can do. You know, there wouldn't be people split there. That's for sure. Yeah.
Switching a bit to life in America today, what's it like right now? What are, I mean, everyday Americans focused on? What do they dream about?
No, no. America is a country where people work intensively. You know, it's a very workaholic country. You know, people take their jobs very seriously, and people have learned. And Elon has often, my sons have often told people, as I've told people, make sure that you're doing a job that you like. You know, you must do what you like. And even if you have to do a job that's not particularly nice, look for the reasons why you like it. And America is full of people who work in jobs that they like doing. And that's why there are only 300 million people. They're 4% of the world's population. 4% of the world's population produce 75% of the world's goods. That's pretty weird, if you know what I mean. That's pretty odd, if you know what I mean. At the moment, they want, as somebody said, quite funny, they want 500 million European people want 300 million Americans to protect them against 120 million Russians. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, so Europe, unfortunately, has lost its way. It's very bad. You know, it's very sad.
With Donald Trump returning to office, how has domestic policy changed?
Well, before Donald Trump came into office, people were very downcast last year in America. People were worrying about what's going to happen. They thought America's going to go down like all the other countries because of the crooked and terrible people that were in control, like Biden and Obama and so on. And then they had the election, and then Trump was elected. And when I spent the whole of April traveling across America, and I could see that everyone was very, very happy. Everyone has got their confidence back. And it's not like only a few people, it's like 100% of the people are very happy, you know, that everything's looking much better than it ever was. It was going well under the last crowd. We're all going to be arrested now for the things they've done, you know.
And what about foreign policy? How do you feel about the use of tariffs?
Well, I think tariffs are, my sons and myself are the kind of people, we don't really believe in tariffs of any kind. But if a country is going to place tariffs on you, then you place tariffs on them. That's simple. So it's quid pro quo. If people are going to tariff you, then you tariff them. So you had the ridiculous situation that cars being brought into Europe and other places were being tariffed from America, or products were being tariffed at 30 to 45%. In some cases, goods from United States to Canada were being tariffed at 275%, whereas goods from those countries to America were being tariffed at 2.5%. Well, that's obviously ridiculous. You know, that's ridiculous. So Trump has put an end to that. And I can't agree with it more. I can't agree with it more.
But
Yes.
where could this kind of strategy lead the country and the world?
Pardon?
I mean, this kind of strategy, where could this lead the country
No,
and the world?
well, you see, England was charging tariffs of 40% for American goods, and America was charging Britain, UK, 2.5%. So now they've come to a new agreement where they will each charge 10%, 10% both ways. So that's much better. And obviously, you know, these countries then use these tariffs to prevent America from selling their goods. And then at the same time, the tariffs they get, they use to give to the population free, so-called free, but it's not really free. And then because they're giving the lazy people all these socialist things for so-called free, then those people vote for that government, and because they don't want to work. So now England will have to start working again. The people will have to start working. Yeah, because it's now 10% tariffs each way.
Turning to global affairs, what's your take on BRICS? Is it a serious alliance with a real future, and does it challenge the dominance of the US dollar?
Well, I think any new setup is worth looking at for anybody. That's what people do. That's progress. I think BRICS made sense when Biden and Obama and those bad people were in charge of things in America. BRICS doesn't make sense with Trump in control. And presuming people like Trump continue to be in control in America, then BRICS doesn't make sense anymore, because Trump is going to put an end to bad policies that made people want to go to BRICS in the first place, you see. So BRICS is not with Trump Trump and people like him in the US running things. BRICS won't be necessary. But if you went back to the way the Democrats were doing things in America, then you can understand why people wanted to get away from the dollar and start something like BRICS, you see. But that's what really boils down to these tariffs and everything, that to try and make trade and such like work more smoothly, the people that were in control before were making things as difficult as possible for everybody. Whereas now, with intelligent people like the Trump people, they are going to make things easier for people. So in some respects, the BRICS arrangement is not really going to be necessary. I was in Russia recently, and I was very amazed to see how beautiful Russia is and how beautiful Moscow is and how beautiful the people are. And it's a great shame that so much effort has been put into over the last 300 years, not now, for the last, at least 300 years, how much effort the European countries, so-called European countries, have made it so difficult for Russia to enter the European community. For reasons I can't understand why. I mean, it was the Russian army that defeated Napoleon. Otherwise, the whole of Europe would still be speaking French. You know, if it wasn't for the Russian army back in 1812 or thereabouts, if it wasn't for the Russians, Europe would be speaking French. The whole Europe. But you know, but for some reason, over the last 300 years, the European community has always made it very difficult for Russia to be included. And that's wrong. That's terribly, terribly wrong. Russia has a great deal to contribute to the world. I mean, apart from the fact that they have a monopoly on good-looking people, you know, I don't know if you got what I said. Russia has a monopoly on good-looking people. I've never seen so many good-looking people as what I've seen in Russia. Handsome, beautiful people. Do you understand? Yes. Europeans are not so good-looking as Russians. No,
Interesting thoughts.
Not even a little bit. Eh? Yeah. Yeah. So people are losing out so much. These days, of course, people can travel to Russia, but it should be much, much more part of the world. It should be a case that nearly everybody should have been to Russia, and not just a few people. Nearly everybody should be say they've been to Russia, and Russia has so much to offer. I mean, really, I mean, it's just everything as it stands at the moment is just not right, you know, not right. I understand Russia's problem with the Ukraine. The things that were being done using Ukraine as a stooge against Russia were very obvious, and Mr. Putin and the Russian government had to do something about it. And that's why we have this Ukraine problem. Minister Lavrov was telling me recently that the Ukrainian government was referring to people in Donetsk and so on as creatures that have to be eliminated, you know, and that was before Russia took steps to protect the people there, you know. So I understand a lot of these things that are not clear to the rest of the world. I understand it.
So just one final question is, if you could give one piece of advice to world leaders, or maybe a universal message, what would it be? How can we move from war to peace?
Well, I would say it's happening. The people need to talk with each other. That's obvious, you know. And we also have the fact that there are really evil regimes in the world that are not good, whose ideas are really damaging. And I think in that case of the mullahs of Iran and so on, that they are not good ideas. Their ideas are not good for people. But basically, we need to be able to talk to each other and trying to see how it's possible to come to agreements rather than other ways, you know. But I'm not an expert, but I would say things are pretty much better today in the world than they've ever been. They're far better now than they've ever been, especially with Trump back in control in America. Things are much better than they were last year, and generally things are better now in the world than they were, say, 100 years ago, you know, where you know, people were not talking to each other. And in fact, because you have so much ability to communicate now, it's very hard to lie to people. It's very hard to lie to populations because they can find out for themselves through the media and through not the established media, but through media like yours and through the social platforms and so on. People are able to find out more themselves and become more involved. Whereas 100 years ago, people didn't know what was going on. They simply had no clue what was going on. You know, many people in the population were just told, you have to do this or you have to do that.
Thanks for listening. Share this video and stay tuned.